Hey guys, Joshua's Boosters here, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. Well, you asked for it, you got it. Today I will be showing you guys my Burning Abyss profile. Earlier this week I did a video on the Burning Abyss trap deck, or the Burning Abyss deck in general, in this current format with replay and some of the first turn combos you can do. And I wasn't sure whether I should include a deck profile with it, since I didn't really top any event with it or anything, and basically that's the reason why I wasn't sure if the deck list would be interesting enough. But I heard you guys loud and clear. A lot of people in the comments were asking for the deck list, so in this video I'm actually going to be showing you guys the deck list I am playing right now for the Burning Abyss deck. I must note, this is also the deck, if there was like a YCS type event right now, or regionals, Euros, whatever, I would very likely be playing this deck, because I really think it's very strong and very viable at this moment. So I definitely have a lot of trust in this deck. I'm gonna be showing you guys the list I've been playing, but I'm also gonna be showing you guys some cards that I played before I settled on this list, or that I think might be included in the deck if the format changes, which is most likely will soon because of hopefully a ban list dropping. But I'll show these cards to you guys when we get there. And also this deck profile will be pretty in-depth, so I won't just be showing you guys the list with no explanations. I'll really be talking about why I'm running all the cards I'm playing, and why I'm not running the cards that I will be showing you guys later. So I really hope it will be insightful and that you get something out of it if you want to play this deck. So I guess with that all being said, let's hop into the deck profile. So it's finally time to get into the actual deck profile. As you can see, I have the cards I have been playing over here, the main deck, the side deck, or the main deck, the extra deck, and the side deck. And then here are some options I can search for all of those. So we will be looking at all of those cards. With that being said, let's just move these out of the way for now and first focus on the main deck. Okay, so starting out, we do have 3 tour guides. This is basically the heart and soul of the deck. The entire deck actually just revolves around resolving Skarm, or Gref into Skarm, or Seer into Skarm into tour guides. So you basically set yourself up for a follow-up in the form of tour guide literally every turn. Aside from that, tour guide's also 1 card starter, allowing you to set up both Beatrice and Dragoon. If you're not familiar with that play, you can check out the video I uploaded earlier this week with the combos. But yeah, playing this as a trio is just obvious, I think. However, we are playing quite a lot of normal summons in a way, but that's, I mean, you just have to play this even if we are doing that. So yeah, 3 tour guides as one of the starters. Then the second actual starter I want to say is Gref, simply because Gref will eventually allow you to either go into your Beatrice play or your Verta Beatrice play, which of course does set up tour guides very likely for the next turn, because this card can turn into any BA, Skarm, Seer, it doesn't really matter, and then eventually those can turn into tour guides to go for the follow-up, and then mid-game this card can, you know, turn into literally every BA you want, depending on the situation. 1 super, 2 rare. If you do have 2 European supers, please let me know, because for some reason I don't appear to have those, which is very strange. And then the other trio of BA we're playing is Skarm. Like I said in the previous video, this is actually the most important BA right now, because it will set us up for a follow-up literally every turn. Oftentimes you're gonna discard Gref with Dragoon, then Gref is gonna summon Skarm, which is gonna destroy itself by its own effect, and then in the end phase Skarm will add tour guides. And then in your own turn you will often go Skarm for Gref or Seer, because after that you can use any of your discard cards, and then eventually it will just replace itself by turning into tour guide. So this card is also basically the heart of the soul of the deck. If you're drawing any of these cards, you're fine. Even when you're drawing like just Gref and a couple of traps, or just Skarm and a couple of traps, you can usually prevent your opponent from going off, and then in the end phase try to resolve Skarm, or Gref into Skarm or whatever, and then that way set up your tour guide for the next turn. Or if you think your opponent has a lot of disruption in the form of hand traps or actual traps, you might try to just search another floater with this and that way continue grinding, but that's really depending on the game state. Then the last trio of BA we are playing is, you probably guessed it, but it is Seer. In fact, for quite a while I was playing just 2 of this, because this is not actually a starter. I would say it's like a semi-starter, because Seer plus any BA will eventually end on Beatrice, and of course Beatrice is gonna allow you to float back into the Seer. Or if your opponent doesn't do anything threatening enough, you can just Beatrice send Skarm to go into Tour Guide. But just because I wanted to play the maximum amount of starters, I did decide to play Seer. And the thing is, while it is actually kind of bad if you draw a hand of Tour Guide, Gref, Seer going first, because you kind of want to normal summon all of those, especially drawing the Gref is annoying. But going second, it's kind of interesting, because going first, right, these are all normal summons you want to do, but then, and so these are kind of dead cards, but going second, these actually turn into extenders, because they will allow you to go into Exceeds, to go into Zeus to bait your opponent's background, and afterwards you can go for Tour Guide to try to play that way. So going second, drawing multiples of these cards is fine, but going first, it can be a little cloggy. Which is why you're gonna see I'm not actually playing Fiendish Rhino Warrior in this deck for that specific reason. Because Fiendish Rhino Warrior is another normal summon, and even though it looks like the BAs like Gref and Seer are actually special summons or extenders, as you might want to call them, they actually are not if you're going first anyway, and we really don't want to open a lot of normal summons, because obviously the deck just can't really do anything with that. So those are all the starters in monster form anyway, and the pseudo starters in Seer. Then for the rest of the BA ratio, I am playing double Farva. You could make a case for playing 3 of these, but I think it's pretty unnecessary. You're also not wanting to actually mill a lot in this version of the deck because of the Red Ice package. Even though it might come up mid game or late game where you do want to mill 3, and sometimes you can get lucky by milling this. The reason I'm playing 2 of this instead of 1 is because you always want 1 in the deck to use for the Beatrice disrupt effect. So that is pretty important, and the reason why you want to play 2, just in case you hard draw 1, you won't be stuck not being able to send. Then I'm also playing Alec. I honestly don't think Alec is good at all this format, or it also wasn't included in my list for a long time. But eventually I figured that going second you just want a lot of different names. And Alec isn't horrible, it's not like Dragik for example. And you want different names of course to go into Exceeds to bait out your opponent's cards, or go into Zeus before trying your actual play. Which is why I did decide to include Alec later. Then Kelcap I think is actually quite good, because there's a lot of Eltic variants in the format of course, so his effect might actually come up, but again it's mostly just another name. Libic is necessary in some situations. You might even consider playing 2 Libic actually, because sometimes drawing Libic can be very annoying, because you need to send it to actually keep playing while you have non-BA monsters on the field, because of course Libic is the one that says special summon the Fiend from hand and negates effects. And then the last BA I am playing is a Barbar. Again, it's not totally horrible like Dragik or Kakna, and you just want to play a lot of BA names to summon them from the hand. And also, if you might go to time, this card is pretty decent to have, of course. So that's it for the BA names. Then the last monsters I'm playing are Red Ice and Dark Magician. I'm not playing any hand traps, but you will be seeing why in a moment. For spells, basically, this is the one starter spell, I want to say, which is Foolish. But again, it is really weird, because oftentimes you're going to want to go Foolish, send Gref, and then Gref summon Seer. But that way, you will actually not be able to go into the Verte Beatrice play unless you have 2 other BA names in hand. So that way, it's just, this card can be weird, but it definitely can be very good as well. For example, when you go Tour Guide and then negate its effect, and then you can go Foolish, send Libic to summon the BA from hand and continue playing that way. Which is one of the reasons why I did include it in the final build. I do I do sometimes side this out actually, because the card is actually not as strong as you might think on first glance. Then moving on, I am playing triple Pot of Prosperity. This card is absolutely insane and one of the best cards printed in recent times. Basically, it is Pot of Duality, but without any noteworthy restrictions. In a deck like Burning Abyss, which doesn't include any draw effects anyway, this card is just perfect. It can help you dig for your starter cards like Graph, Skarm, Tour Guide, or if you already have those and you already resolved all your plays, this can help you dig for either a follow-up to guarantee that, or for trap cards, which is of course very strong, and breaking or going seconds to break boards. You can try to dig for an additional Burning Abyss, or again breaking board trap cards, and post-siding especially. This card is very strong because it might help you to cards like Dark Ruler or other cards you might be playing. So this card is absolutely insane. I would definitely say you have to play 3 of this, especially in the Red Eyes build. Because in the other build it's actually probably better to play Desire, since all your BAs are at 3 right now anyway. But in this build you obviously just don't want to banish your Red Eyes engine, so Prosperity is just absolutely insane. Then I'm playing the one Call by the Grave. Shouldn't be that much to explain about this card. A lot of people are playing hand traps, which are actually quite impactful against Burning Abyss right now. So yeah, and then the last spell is the Red Eyes Fusion. Because of the entire, that's basically the entire thing about this deck, right? It's suddenly, instead of just being able to put up Beatrice as an engine disruption, we actually have access to cards like Red Eyes Dragoon, Beatrice, and Zeus now as engine cards. Like, I know they're not technically Burning Abyss cards, but your engine actually helps get to them, which is one of the reasons why I think this deck is so strong right now. So, yeah. So moving on to the trap part of the deck, and I'm just gonna start out and say something that might be considered a little bit controversial, but I wanna say Burning Abyss is actually the best trap deck of the format. Now I know you might quickly say that Eldlik is the best trap deck of the format, which makes sense in a way, because you know the Eldlik cards keep replenishing themselves, but in the end the deck actually isn't able to engine-wise provide a lot of pressure. While the Burning Abyss cards on their own are actually insane at applying pressure via the cards like Zeus, Beatrice, and Dragoon. Of course you can play Dragoon in Eldlik, and you can splash Zoo with Eldlik to go into Zeus, but all of that requires you to play other engines, which actually force you to replace your trap part of the deck. And traps are actually quite strong in this format because there was just a lot of good going second traps, which is something I thought I'd never say, because a long time ago people basically considered trap cards to be horrible exactly because they were not good going second, but you're gonna see in a moment that literally every trap card that's in this deck is really good going second to break boards. So starting out we do have triple Solemn Strike. This card is obviously super impactful going first, but especially going second in combination with the next card, which is actually Torrential Tribute. This card is insane. A lot of the times when your opponent goes full combo, just your Burning Abyss cards, if you don't have enough of them, won't be able to push through. However, if you do happen to open this combination of cards, you can oftentimes just go, set a bunch of back row. Eventually they're gonna summon something. You're gonna flip your Torrential Tribute. They are gonna use their Omni Negate to negate Torrential, and at that point you're just gonna chain strike. They won't have anything to respond to that, and then their entire field is just gone, and with a little bit of luck you have some more traps to protect you from them coming off again, and then after that you can actually try to set your own board. And obviously it should go without saying, but these cards are just insane going first. Then some more trap cards I am playing is Dino-Miscus. This is admittedly a little bit less impactful than Torrential is going second, but again, this paired with something like Torrential is absolutely insane, because when your opponent summons a monster, you can actually go Dino-Miscus. This especially comes up against stuff like Dragon Link or Adamancipator, where they just have Boral Savage as an Omni Negate. They go summon something, you're gonna go Dino-Miscus, target the Boral Savage. They are gonna be forced to negate that, of course. And then when they chain the negate for Boral Savage, you're actually gonna chain Torrential. I know a lot of people think that's not a legal play because you have to activate Torrential Tribute as chaining 1 or whatever, but it's actually not the case. As long as you are in the summon window, you can flip Torrential Tribute. In fact, if you have double Torrential Tribute, it's the same as Dino-Miscus Torrential Tribute, because you can go, they summon something, you go Torrential, they go Boral Savage, and then you just chain your other Torrential. So keep that in mind while playing this deck, because that is an interaction that comes up a lot. And then of course Dino-Miscus synergizes really well with the BA cards, because pitching them to the graveyard oftentimes just results into them floating into other cards. And then to go with the Dynamiscus, I'm actually playing Phoenix One Windblast. So this card might be a blast from the past for a lot of you. I know I played this in 2015, actually at Nationals and at Euros. And it basically just serves the same purpose as Dynamiscus. Basically, it's deciding between this and Karma Cut, and while Karma Cut can be more impactful at times, this actually also is able to hit set spells and traps, which is just pretty good against the trap decks of the format. And other than that, I don't think the difference between Karma Cut and discard are that big. And again, all the same interactions with the Torrential apply, of course, with this, opposed to Dynamiscus, although it's actually a cost to discard for Windblast, so in some odd scenarios you can actually lose out your card effect to something like Didicro, and Dynamiscus actually doesn't force you to discard for a card effect, so that's something you must notice. Then some more trap cards are actually good going second. Ice Dragon's Prison. This card can be a little bit weird against stuff like Drytron because it doesn't really interact with a lot of those cards. But against Virtual World this is mostly fine and can definitely be pretty impactful, and obviously it's just really good against stuff like Zodiac, Dragon Link or Eldlik. And again, this is just a card that's really good going second, which is why I did include it in the list. And then the last actual trap card for the deck is Fiend's Griefing. For those of you who don't know, this says target a monster opponent's graveyard, shuffle it back into the deck, and then send a Fiend from your deck to the graveyard. So this can basically serve as either a double disruption where you shuffle a card your opponent is targeting in the graveyard back into the deck, or using it in the graveyard back into the deck, and then sending Farva to banish something from the opponent's field. Or you can use this to, of course, use the first effect to shuffle something back, and then Skarm to guarantee a follow-up for the next turn, or send Grav to defend yourself. So very versatile card. Now you might be wondering if I think all these cards are so good, why am I just playing 2 of these? But that's actually not the case, because I am playing 2 Trap Trick in the deck. So for all these cards, I'm basically playing 4 copies in a way. And then basically Dynamiscus and Windblast are relatively interchangeable, so I'm playing basically 7 copies of this just because the card is so good and spot removal is super important this format. I did opt to not play 3 Trap Trick just because it is quite cloggy if you open multiples, and also as opposed to all the other trap cards I'm playing in this deck, this card is actually horrible to draw going second, because after you resolve this you can only activate 1 trap card after that, and this will often mess up your trap card interactions to break boards. That being said, I also do side out this card almost every game going second against combo, just because of the reason I just mentioned. So that should come down to a total of 43 cards actually. I think the deck can get away with playing more than 40, because you are playing the Red Ice package, which you never want to draw, and never want to mill, which is also why we're always just milling 1 with Dante. And then also it is playing a lot of starters or semi-starters, so I felt relatively fine playing that amount of cards. That's it for the main deck. Then for the considerations in the main deck, I have 2. I already talked about Phoenix Rhino Warrior a little bit. And I'm just not playing it because that would mean I just play so many normal summons, and if you're playing so many normal summons, you just at some point run out of things you can do. However, this does contribute to, if you really need to get lucky with mills, it of course helps with that. It also is another starter card because it can turn into Grav or Skarm. It doesn't really matter. And then Backjack is also a card I played for a pretty long time, but I just found the instances where it was actually just dead in my hand were a lot higher than the instances where it was actually good to send it off Beatrice, which is why I did decide to cut it. However, if I did include Backjack back into the deck, which I definitely think might be viable again in the future, might even be viable now to be honest, I would also include the Rhino Warrior, just because Rhino Warrior allows you to go send Backjack as well, which is an interesting interaction. Would you need that? Because of course Backjack is a fiend monster. And I'm playing quite a lot of normal traps in the deck anyway, which is why it was included in the first draft of the list. This card is super cool, it just really takes me back to the old times. So yeah, definitely if you want to try some stuff with the deck, I would recommend trying out these cards, even though I'm not a huge fan of either of those at the moment. They might come back into the deck later. So yeah, then moving on to the extra deck. I am playing 2 Dante. I know for a long time a lot of BA decks just played 1, but I think since this deck can be quite grindy, playing 2 of the OG is really good. It does facilitate your first turn play, and then after that, sometimes it just comes up where you never use the second Dante and just float into the first Dante with Seer if you want to go for another Zeus, which I will talk about in a little bit. But I still think 2 is fine, and I do think you have the extra deck space to run 2, so yeah, the heart and soul of the deck, of course. Beatrice should also be included. Part of the first turn combo, this card is both a great interruption as well as a floater, as well as that it sets up your next turn, so this card is actually really, really insane. The destruction effect actually comes up quite a lot more than you would expect, so I am playing the Pilgrim in the deck. There it is, and this card is absolutely insanely powerful. If I do decide to show some more replays, I will try to pick like a replay where you can see how insane this card is. Sometimes you start your turn with like 1 card in hand and just Beatrice on field, and then at the end of your opponent's turn you will have like 5 cards because of this. Because there's really interesting stuff you can do actually with this card. Since it's not a hard once per turn, one of the lines of play you can do, which is really good. So let's say you have this in hand, right? And a Skarm. One of the things you do is you can go Pilgrim Effect, discard Farfa, and then instead of that's, you know, there's actually 2 ways you can do that, because Farfa can be used as an interruption, but it can also be used to you will draw a card, then you can bench the Pilgrim, then in the end phase Pilgrim will return, and since it's not a hard once per turn, you can actually just do his effect again. So pitch another BA, draw another card, and then trigger Skarm to search the end phase. So this card does allow for a lot of cool plays. Very good card. And then, of course, the card that basically made this deck viable again on its own is Zeus. You can actually get away with playing just one of this, but I do like to, when you're playing against grindy decks, oftentimes you'll try to go for the first one. They're gonna strike, negate, or destroy, or whatever. This, and then again, you might want to try it again the following turn. Or if you're grinding against combo decks, one of the things you might often do actually is just go Dante, detach nothing, or detach 1. It's like, depends on the game state. Then you can go swing, go into Zeus, and you have a Zeus Disrupt, and then later you can actually revive the Dante with Seer. And then in main phase 2 you can go into Downward and set up another Zeus, since you now have 2 materials for the card. So that way the BA engine is actually surprisingly oppressive right now, because the floating actually does turn into threatening stuff instead of just random floaters that don't really do anything. Then I am playing 1 Break Sword. This just comes up to bait stuff. Sometimes you just want to go into this to swing over stuff without detaching something, then go into Downward, and then go into Zeus to have 2 Zeus uses out of that. It really depends on the game state. This just really helps you bait stuff against certain decks and in certain game states. Then Fortune Tune. This card was actually showcased in my previous Burning Abyss video. I know a lot of virtual world players are actually also on this, but the thing about this card is when it would be destroyed you can detach a material as a continuous effect, and it cannot be targeted. So against a lot of the back row decks, the thing you do is just go special on BAs, 2 BAs, go into Fortune Tune, swing, and then in main phase 2 you can go Zeus and try to blow up their entire field, because they oftentimes won't have any interaction with the Fortune Tune. One of the things you might be inclined to do, but you shouldn't do, is go like Fortune Tune attack and then go into Downward, because if you do that they might actually disrupt the Downward with something that targets or destroys, and that way you won't be able to go into Zeus. But of course it is dependent on the game state. However, this card is absolutely insane, won me so many games because people just don't expect this card, and then they just get blown out by the Birdie plus Zeus combo. That's it for the Exceeds and the 1 Fusion. For the Link monsters, I'm playing 1 Gravity Controller, just in case you open a random BA and Seer. You can just go Special Summon BA, Normal Summon Seer, Dante in the extra deck monster zone, go into this, then float into Dante, add back Seer, and then you can of course just pitch the Seer to turn the Dante into a Beatrice, which is a first turn play that does come up quite often if your hand is not optimal, so I would definitely play this card. Then I am playing the Cherubini. This card actually hardly ever comes up, but there are game states where you like basically Tour Guide into this, or any BA and Grav into this will eventually end on a Link 4 with a Skarm Serm in the end phase, which is just really powerful. And I wouldn't really cut this card. Also, there's super weird instances where your opponent's actually, when you're playing against Dragoon and you have Pilgrim on the field, which is actually something that happens pretty regularly if your opponent's playing a Dragoon deck. You can actually go Cherubini effect to boost the Pilgrim above the Dragoon attack, and then either your opponent won't know you did that because they don't they aren't actually aware of the Cherubini effect, or your opponent is going to be forced to negate this, and then after that you can just easily out your Dragoon, so keep that in mind. Then I am playing one Unicorn, just in some cases against grindy decks it's pretty good to have this as an option, but this is probably my least favorite card in the extra deck, and I'm probably going to swap this out for something else. I'm just not sure what yet. Then I'm playing the one Apollousa basically to go along with the Cherubini, just because Cherubini turning into Apollousa can be quite strong. That's it for the Link monsters, aside from Verte, which, much like Zeus, kind of blew new life into this deck. And then to go with the Verte, of course, we are playing the one Dragoon. Then for the extra deck options I have left are actually IP and Borrelsword. Borrelsword should speak for itself. I just found I didn't really have that much issues closing out the game, which is why I didn't include this in the deck. And then IP is actually basically an option for when you hard draw your Red Eyes Fusion, and instead of doing the Verte Beatrice play, you can go into the IP Beatrice play, and then eventually you might turn the IP and the Beatrice, or for example if you send Seer and then revive Dante, you can go IP, go into Unicorn, or IP, go into Apollousa. Just kind of depends. But I just found in playtesting, even if I draw a Red Eyes Fusion, this literally never came up. I never made this card, but it is something to consider. Especially if you really don't want to play the Red Eyes card for some reason. I don't know why you would want that, but who knows, maybe Dragoon gets banned on the list, we don't know that, so then definitely back to IP. But yeah, those are the extra deck options. Then moving on to the last part of the deck, which will be the side deck. So this is probably the least interesting part about the deck, to be honest, aside from a couple of cards which I'm going to show, but my side deck right now is just 3 Lancea. I'm not going to go too in-depth about this. 3 Nibiru. This does, of course, conflict with the BA engine a little bit, but there's actually a lot of ways to play, even if you do have Nibiru on the field. Then I am playing triple Lightning Storm, triple Judgment, because in a way this is still a trap deck, and sometimes you can definitely get blown out by cards like Lightning Storm or Red Reboot or Feather Duster. I'm not including Feather Duster, by the way, just because this card does actually come up destroying monsters if you're playing against a deck like the Lyrilusk Strike Brigade deck, for example. And then I'm playing the one Order, again as a protective card against stuff like Dark Ruler, Droplet, Lightning Storm and Feather Duster. I am playing Reboot just because this card can actually just reboot your opponent and then Zeus them into Oblivion, which is of course very strong. And then the last card I am including is Mischief of the Gnomes. Now, if you don't know what this card does, basically that's an on-field effect and a graveyard effect. Both are exactly the same, which is this turn reduces the levels of all monsters in each player's hand by 1. So this card is specifically very strong against Virtual World, which is the reason why I'm including this, because actually going first, Beatrice against Virtual World, it doesn't do that much to disrupt them. Like, if their only play is normal summon in Virtual World, and then try to go into the Virtual World lines to play that way, it might be good to go, when they normal summon the monster, just Farfa their Virtual World away and then hope they don't have any follow-up. But that's most of the time pretty lackluster if they open something like Kowloon or Qinglong. And this actually shuts them off for almost all of their plays, because you can just send it to the graveyard Beatrice. Since Beatrice does send literally any card in the deck to the graveyard, and then you can just banish it and reduce the levels of all their monsters in their hand by 1, and that way just really shut off their plays. Then the one-sided card that is pretty interesting but wasn't in my deck, or isn't in my deck right now, is Nelshul Iril, which is a little bit the same as Mischief of the Gnomes, where it's just another really good card to send off Beatrice and just basically go Magical Musketeer, Dancing Needle on your opponent and just banish 3 cards from the graveyard, which is obviously super insane against certain matchups. But just for right now, I don't really think Eltic is much of a problem for this deck. So that's why it's not in my build right now, but this is definitely a really cool option you can explore. So yeah guys, that was the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope all my explanations were clear enough to understand. If you did make it this far into the video, please consider leaving a like. If you have any cool ideas I could do making videos with the Burning Abyss archetype, I mean, be sure to let me know. And you know, if you haven't subscribed yet and you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing, maybe even hitting the notification bell. And with that all out of the way, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!